Welcome everyone to the March 21st Board of Supervisors meeting. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight we are going to begin with two public hearings. I first call the public hearing for H.R. 448 to order, and we are on the record. We will first hear from our solicitor, Mr. McKenna, then we will have a motion to adopt the resolution, board comments, and public comments. Mr. McKenna, do you want to get started?
Thank you.
Where is Mr. McKenna?
I know.
Sorry, I'm not used to
I have moved, I've been told, I'm sorry about that. Good evening. We've marked a number of board exhibits for the hearing this evening. Board Exhibit 1 is the proof of publication in the Daily Local News on March 13th. Exhibit 2 is the proof of publication in the Mainline Times Suburban on March 13th. Board Exhibit 3 is notice to the email distribution list dated March 7th. And Board Exhibit 4 is the draft of the proposed ordinance amendment for H.R. 448.
Thank you. I will ask for a motion to adopt H.R. 448, amending the Code of Tredyffrin, Chapter 35, Parks and Recreation Board. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any board discussion?
Yes, these changes are a long time coming. We're at the Parks and Rec Department, we've been working to bring up the ordinances to reflect modern day laws and ways of doing things at the township. The previous ordinances that we were operating under were passed in 1979, and so this H.R. 448 encompasses much needed changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other board comment? Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote. I will start on my right with Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Supervisor Humble?
Aye.
Supervisor Holt?
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki?
Aye.
Supervisor Freed?
Aye.
Supervisor Basker?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. I am now going to close the public hearing for H.R. 448, and I will call the public hearing to order for H.R. 449. And again, we are on the record. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you. Good evening again. These are the board exhibits for H.R. 449. Board Exhibit 1 is the proof of publication of the notice in the Daily Local News on March 13th. Board Exhibit 2 is the proof of publication of the notice in the Mainline Times Suburban on March 13th. Board Exhibit 3 is the notice to email distribution list dated March 7th. And Board Exhibit 4 is the draft of the proposed ordinance amendment.
Thank you. Do we have any board comment?
Yes, this is the second part to changes that were necessary to be made to the Parks and Recreation ordinances in order to bring them current with current law and current way of doing things with the township. Again, the original ordinances prior to these changes originated in 1979. Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot to do the motion. I apologize. I will now ask for the motion to adopt H.R. 449 to amend the Code of Tredyffrin Township, Chapter 138, Parks and Playgrounds.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any other board discussion?
I would just point out that there is a very slight amendment to the permission of allowance of consumption of alcoholic drinks within township parks. Any such allowance would have to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. And frankly, my intent here of putting out, and I'll speak just for myself, is that it would very seldom be permitted within the parks for very specific events, again, as approved by the township. maybe 2 or 3 times a year for either the Township Day or something along those lines. Only during the day for a certain set of hours, not at night. So this is going to be a very seldom used exception, but something that I think a lot of the community and other community events I've attended in various other municipalities, folks have really enjoyed. So that's kind of my intent behind this provision.
Thank you. Do we have any other board discussion?
Yeah, the only comment I would add is just to amplify what you just said, Supervisor Holt. I've spoken to quite a few residents about this, both concerned initially about what we were proposing, which is the sale of alcohol in the park, and then once they understand that in fact it really is under the control of the supervisors, that we would have to approve any permit, so it's not like we're going to be selling beer at a concession stand every day or something, and that would really be limited to specific events where it was appropriate and where it would really be something that people would desire. I think most of the people I've spoken with have been very positive once they understood what this really meant. I just wanted to say that in that respect, I'm also very supportive.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, we will move to the vote. And again, this is a roll call vote. Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Freed.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. I'm now going to close the public hearing and we are off the record. Thank you very much. And I will call to order the public meeting, and we will begin with announcements. The Board of Supervisors will continue the special meeting from March 7th to discuss long-term strategic funding options on April 4th from 7 to 9 p.m. If you are unable to attend in person, you can participate by Zoom, and the meeting will be broadcast on TTTV and YouTube. You may also comment by email at ttbosmeeting@tredyffrin.org by 4 p.m. the day of the meeting. There are 2 vacancies on the Park and Recreation Board. If you are interested in volunteering to serve, please send a letter of interest and brief resume to tredyffrin@tredyffrin.org. And finally, after years in the making, the Tredyffrin Historic Preservation Trust has set its grand opening of the Jones Log Barn Living History Center for Sunday, April 3rd, 2022, 1 to 3 p.m. Located at 297 Adams Drive, Chesterbrook, the Living History Center joins the existing Du Portail House and the circa 1792 federal barn properties. The museum features the history of the Jones Log Barn and its rebuilding process, as well as an expansive vintage farm equipment display. The center brings 18th century history and farming to life, and admission is free on Sundays 1 to 3 p.m. from April through October. We now move to the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 28th, 2022 public meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 7th, 2022 special meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We now move to Township business. The board met in executive session prior to this meeting to discuss legal matters. We move to Supervisor Liaison Reports. Supervisor.
Thank you very much. The Planning Commission meeting on 3/17 was canceled, so I have no report for there. The next Planning Commission meeting is the 21st of April at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Supervisor Humble.
Thank you. The Parks and Recreation Board was scheduled to meet this past March 9th at 7 p.m. in Keene Hall. However, we did not have a quorum to show up, so there was no meeting. And I have nothing else to report for Parks and Rec Foundation or for the school district. Thank you.
Supervisor Holt.
Thank you. I attended my first pension board trustees meeting, and I was incredibly impressed by our trustees and the attention to the investments that the township makes for our public employee pensions. I will say that they are looking into exiting any Russian investments that may be part of that portfolio. Frankly, it's only going to be within it's within Vanguard bond funds or Vanguard total stock funds. It's not really much that they can do about it because they have followed up with Vanguard and they're actually looking to withdraw from their Russian involvement. So that's really my only comment on that, but it was really great to go to my first meeting with the pension trustees. I look forward to working with them.
Thank you. Supervisor Wysocki.
Yes, the zoning hearing board held a special meeting on March 10, at which the board continued hearing additional testimony in the validity challenge of applicant Finery LLC and Greenbridge Development to the Rural Conservation District zoning designation applicable to the Picket Boats property, 355 Chase Road. Tredyffrin Township is opposing the challenge and defending this rural conservation zoning designation. The hearing was further continued to a special meeting on Thursday, April 5th at 6 p.m. The next regular meeting of the zoning hearing board is 7 p.m. this Thursday, March 24th.
Thank you. Supervisor Freed.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. There was a Historic Commission meeting on March 16th. Last Wednesday, a lot of issues were covered. However, because we have a presentation tonight from the Historical Commission, it looks like we have at least 3 folks from the commission here. I'm going to let them give their update because I think they're going to be reviewing a lot of what they did in the last year and what was covered in the meeting.
Supervisor Basker.
So from my last report, there have been no meetings of the Environmental Affairs Committee. However, there will be a meeting tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the conference room next door. And also today we have part 2 of a presentation on clean energy, on the Clean Energy Subcommittee. And shortly after this, we'll have Rutger Burma talking about so last time she talked about where we are, and today she'll be talking about where we want to go. And I certainly invite anyone interested to attend that meeting. Also, there was no meeting from the last time I reported on the Library Board of Trustees. The next meeting will be on Thursday this week at the Stratford Library. And again, I would invite everyone to attend because, again, it's a very motivated group of people. Now, the Traffic Committee did meet Wednesday, March 16th at 7:30 a.m. And there was a discussion of a crosswalk at Old Eagle School Road and Homestead Road that had been brought up before. And the Tredyffrin Police Department traffic team felt that, again, that it was not a safe place to put a crosswalk. There was also a request for a crosswalk at Rose Lane and Old Lancaster Road. And again, the feeling was that that is not a safe place to put a crosswalk. The general feeling of the police department traffic team is that just because you paint some lines on the road doesn't necessarily make something a safe place for people to cross. You need a safe place, and then putting the lines can make it safer, but just putting lines, arbitrarily does not make for a safe crosswalk. Now, there was also speeding concerns in the Deepdale neighborhood, and we'll be looking at, doing some review of the speeding there. Now, the big issue for those who live in the vicinity of Thomas and Walker Roads, there's going to be a lot of disruption this summer. Okay, so the Pennsylvania Turnpike will be expanding the turnpike. So the good news is that we had the Pennsylvania Turnpike there, we had PA DOT there, we had Aqua there, and we had representation from PICO. So all of those things are going to be happening this year in that vicinity. When they do the turnpike widening, there'll be times when Thomas Road is closed going onto the turnpike. There'll be other times when it's a one-lane road. And the good news is that all these people are there in the room, they exchanged phone numbers, so they're going to coordinate. So you're not going to have people stepping on one another. They will try and coordinate so that when one of them has some road closed, the other will try and work with them. So that is actually the good news. There are some of the updates that are going in. The turnpike is getting widened. There's going to be a major new 30-inch water main put in, and that's going to be on Gulf Road, bypassing a water main that's in the township. There will be a new gas line put in, and there's new electric lines being put in. So there will be a lot of changes in that area. So please be looking for notices and details as they get published. And that's it for my report, Dr. Gussie.
Thank you. Now we will move on to the presentation that Bhaskar mentioned by the Environmental Advisory Council Clean Energy Committee Energy Transition Plan. And again, this is the second installment of the presentation. Welcome back, Rucker.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good evening. Yeah, this is right. Yeah. A month ago, I gave a short overview of the energy emissions of Tredyffrin Township government and the energy emissions for the Tredyffrin community. Using these emissions helped us, giving us a baseline and helps us to direct where stakeholders should put their focus on when they want to shrink their carbon footprint. And it also helps us to measure progress. Yeah. Okay. In May 2021, the Board of Supervisors adopted the comprehensive plan for Tredyffrin Township. The first chapter in the comprehensive plan focuses on natural resources and the environment. And sustainability is also mentioned in the goal. Sustainability is also interwoven throughout the comprehensive plan. And this plan is in line with the comprehensive plan. So Tredyffrin Township's government commitment to sustainability you can see that in leading by example. So last time I gave an overview of actions the township has taken. For example, the installation of LED streetlights. The township can also show her commitment to sustainability via support and guidance for planning and zoning and other aspects that impact emissions throughout the township. So we should focus on buildings, transportation, renewable energy, and waste management. The township can also show her commitment to sustainability via education and the application of grants if they are available. To reduce the energy footprint in the township, that all the actions we've mentioned in the plan are focused either on energy efficiency, so reducing the carbon footprint, increasing the use of renewable energy, and electrification. So the first action we have written down is to continue to replace the township's vehicle fleet with electric vehicles, because it's the biggest footprint of the township, and it's important to analyze the cash flows throughout the life of every vehicle. So we suggest that every vehicle in the township's fleet should be analyzed. So capital expenditures of electric vehicles are different from gasoline vehicles, but also the cash flows afterwards for maintenance, repairs, and charging are different from gas cars. So it's important to look at the cash flows throughout the lifespan of a car. So furthermore, we recommend that new buildings should be solar ready. So solar ready means that in the design you already think about how your building orientation is. You think about the available roof space. So when you place an air conditioning unit on a roof, you place it in such a way that you still have room for solar panels, for example. It is important that we focus on this and that this is being discussed in the Planning Commission because buildings have a long lifespan, and it's imperative that the Planning Commission is advising this every time we get a new application for this. The DVRPC is estimating that commercial and the industrial sector is responsible for 40% of Tredyffrin's emissions. And if we are not going to implement these standards, we will fail to reduce carbon emissions. So a similar recommendation we have for new buildings, that they are going to be electric vehicle ready. So that's both for residential housing and commercial space. So we had a presentation when we met with other townships when we were writing this plan. And we got a presentation from Rob Graff from the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. And I quote him here, "In order to provide the charging infrastructure that supports the transition to electric vehicles, it is important that when new developments are built or parking lots are resurfaced, they are made charger ready by putting in conduits and wire at minimum and ensuring that electric panels are ready to provide for the increased electricity needed." So it's important for the solar readiness and also for the electric vehicle readiness that you plan for this. It is much cheaper to plan for it and install it immediately than making adjustments afterwards. So it's a good thing to discuss this, and that building companies are going to design for this. Then another action is become silver designated Soul Smart Township. We are currently a bronze Soul Smart Township. And the Soul Smart program was initiated by the Department of Energy to remove any obstacles which might hinder residential solar installation. So we will work on this, and we will find whether we can remove more obstacles to easily install residential solar. Then the next action we wrote down in the plan, that is considering a single hauler ordinance. Currently, the township has multiple trash haulers, and they drive many miles throughout our township on a daily basis. Having a single hauler will reduce the truck traffic and the mileage driven throughout the township. Tredyffrin is one of the few townships in Chester County having multiple trash haulers. And then moving on to actions on education and outreach. So we will develop educational material for the topics you can see on the slides. So renewable energy, energy efficiency, solar, electric vehicles, geothermal, and home electrification, such as heat pumps. We meet regularly with other municipalities to tackle these important issues for stakeholder outreach. Developing educational materials geared to different stakeholders is something that all municipalities need. And I think this is really a good opportunity for us to work with the Chester County Planning Commission. They wrote a climate action plan last year, and it was adopted last year as well. And very recently, they hired a sustainability director. So hopefully we can work together in this area. Another thing we would like to do is the Clean Energy Tour. We organized the Clean Energy Tour for the first time in 2019. That was very successful. So residents who have implemented sustainability measures at their homes invite other residents to their homes, and they can discuss solar, geothermal, or like sustainable landscaping and all these topics. So we plan to organize this on Saturday, October 1st, 2022. And we hope to organize this together with a fundraiser we have for the EAC and the Parks Foundation. Furthermore, we would like to organize again, or we will organize again, an electric vehicle display at public events, Party at the Park. Last year we still had the problem with COVID, so but we've organized it before at the YMCA. And it is really helpful if residents who own an electric vehicle show their vehicle, and residents can then ask questions how their experience is about driving an electric car. So we will continue to write educational articles in the Township magazine and EAC newsletter. The EAC has a new newsletter. It came out a month ago and is put together by Tredyffrin EAC and the Easttown EAC. You can find it on Tredyffrin Township's website. And then we would like to share two flyers we've prepared, two very glossy flyers. So this is an overview of the township's energy usage. And the back of this flyer shows the emissions, the cost, and things I've also shown in my previous presentation. This is it's written, the approach is written, what we've done and what we are going to do. We have a similar flyer for the Tredyffrin Township community-wide. It first shows the energy emissions in the township-wide, and then it gives also tips of what different stakeholders in the township can do on renewable energy, efficiency, and electrification. And then there are some bullet points about renewable energy efficiency and electrification as well. Too many papers. So I would end this presentation with the quote from Robert Tspan: "The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it." I think we live in a time where we've never had so many technical possibilities to drive, to cool and heat our homes, and for clean cooking as well. The costs have come down tremendously. Now we just have to start using them and don't wait for someone else to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks again for your team's hard work on this. It was really informative and gives us some concrete steps forward. Do we have any board comment?
Yeah, I just think it's terrific, you know, the work that you guys have continued to do over the years. I particularly appreciate, I mean, you know, we passed the resolution, you know, the Ready for 100 resolution. I'm glad it didn't become something that just went on the shelf like most of those things do and reports do, and it was, you know, nice at the time. I think you're continuing to apply it. And I particularly appreciate the fact that you identified what our usages are, both at the township and township-wide, and I think it's good for us to see that and have these milestones that we need to improve on.
I just want to say two words. Thank you. Thank you for taking up the laboring oar here, and we started from, and I may be overstating it, but I'll say it, virtually zero, and worked through the pandemic. You worked through the pandemic, and you started from zero before then. And here we are, and we're still moving. You have the framework is there, and we will keep moving. It won't be overnight, but we are going to keep moving forward. We'll work together, and yes, thank you.
Yeah, just wanted to also thank you from my side. And I think that, you know, it's important having that road forward and a road map to go forward, because, you know, the last month's presentation was really good, because as the saying goes, if you don't know where you are, then you're not lost. But, you know, that showed us where we are. And now we can sort of say, how do we go from here to where we want to go? So there's a lot of work that went into it, and I'm deeply appreciative of the work that you've done. Thank you.
Pat, what would a single hauler ordinance look like? Have you seen them in other municipalities? I imagine the township would contract with one provider, and then we would just incorporate that into our budget, or what have you seen?
Honestly, Matt, I haven't spent any time with that yet. I'm happy to look into that, but hasn't been on my radar, to be honest with you, just to even look at it. I haven't seen an ordinance for it. It seems to me it would be more of a contract, but I'd have to look into it. Yeah, I will say we just did a very extensive RFP for a single hauler for Coatesville. That was extensive.
And I know the EAC is doing the research on this now, and I've already heard some of the work they're doing to kind of lay the groundwork for thinking about that.
I know that presently the township, I think it's part of the ordinance, but there's a list of approved trash haulers that can work in Tredyffrin. So I think presently the 3 that are approved is A.J. Blazinski, Republic, and Whitetail. I know some people feel very strongly about who their provider is and wouldn't, necessarily want to switch. And I think it's been important that we've allowed our residents to have choice on who is going to come pick up trash and recycling, and that it's important to pay attention to how our residents feel about this as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say 2 things. One is I'm supportive of looking into a single hauler ordinance, and I'm not inclined to want to put one of these companies out of business, so if you can divide it up in sections of the township or something, that's interesting also, assuming economics work for everybody. But I'd like to get more information about it. But I also want to make sure, first of all, thank you for all the hard work, all you guys. I know you've worked very hard. I'm interested in actionable things that we can do up here. I mean, because, as you know, I want rooftop solar at my house. I'm 100% off the grid. And there's other things we can do. And so to hear actionable things that we as a township can do to reduce our emissions is really important, because we like to see that chart that you showed continue to go down going forward. So I would ask all of us to think about taking action to continue to move in the right direction here. But thank you.
Do we have any public comment on the presentation? All right, then we will move on to a presentation by Rob Williams of our Historical Commission.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Supervisors, for inviting us to speak with you. I believe it's probably been a long time since the Historic Commission has made a presentation to the Supervisors. What we'd like to do tonight is give you an update of what our mission is, what our job is for the public, what we've been doing over the past year, and then what our plans are going forward. And we'll do that in this presentation. A little picture of us, our first time that we were also out in the public with the Party in the Park last year. So I'll just be covering the work of the Commission. Very important, the Certified Local Government is a designation that Tredyffrin Township holds in the state of Pennsylvania. I'll describe that. Our work from last year, touch on our comprehensive plan and how we play in that. The resources, and that's a fancy word for buildings, cemeteries, bridges, everything in the township that is considered, historic. And then move to where we're moving towards, which is to develop a strategic preservation plan, and that will then segue into basically a description of what the grant that we're pursuing, the grants we are pursuing, and then a subsequent action on this agenda tonight. So we have 2 purposes, and this is listed on the township website. We are both we are an advisory organization to the Board of Supervisors. And in that job, we are intended to understand what it is about our heritage here in the township that needs to be understood and honored and preserved. It is a responsibility of all communities, all municipalities through the Pennsylvania Constitution, that this is a job of township government to monitor and manage, the historic resources of the town. The second is one that is actually emerging, which is public education. Not unlike the EAC and all their good outreach work, we're going to be on that same trail, looking at what services and what information we can provide to the public in order to help them, whether residential, commercial owners of properties, and then, of course, helping institutions that also have historic resources on their lands. I'm happy to report we have 4 new members of our commission since a year and a half ago, so we're 7 people. And with all that new talent, one of the important things we did last year was get core training. So we had training from the National Authority on Historic Preservation. All of us participated, and so that gave us a certain level of understanding. So you should know that your commissioners, have at least a core understanding of what the federal, state, local requirements are. So let me touch on this certified local government. This is a designation that comes from the National Park Service, which manages basically historic preservation nationwide. It's a program that rolls down through the 50 states, and each state historic preservation office, ours in Harrisburg, has the authority to designate municipalities as CLGs. What this says up there on the underline, it's communities that actually are recognized for their good practices in managing their preservation programs and the properties therein. We've had this designation since the late 90s. We're one of the early ones, and as it turns out, there's only 48 municipalities out of 2,600 in the state that have this designation. What it does for us, it allows us special access to grants, technical assistance, where we can call Harrisburg and we can get assistance right here for free for any advisory for any of the properties that we have. And also, I'll demonstrate, it also gives all of our owners of historic properties access to other grants through the state. So the Keystone Grants is one program, and I'll describe specifically how that helped one organization in our township. I'll just note that with a little market research, we discovered that not all these CLGs apply for grants, and so we think we're in pretty good running for one of the grants for this coming year. As far as what we did last year, this was our first really get busy year, and I'm very proud of what we accomplished. First and foremost, we too were busy with the comp plan, making sure Chapter 3 was fully tuned up. But we also looked at all the other chapters and made sure any place where Tredyffrin heritage, Tredyffrin properties, whether it's economic development, land development, parks and rec, we made sure that, at least we had a touch point there. We did get the grant for $7,000 to do the training last year. That grant, by the way, is a 10-to-1 match. It's one of the special grant programs in the state with that kind of leverage. We did get the training by the national organization. And our commissioners got on the road last year. We started walking tours and driving tours to look at all the properties in the township. And really, it was a time for us to become familiar with the language and the concepts of historic preservation. We went in pairs, and it was really fun to actually visit downtown Paoli, downtown Stratford, drive around, the countryside in the north half of Tredyffrin, and really see these properties, stop and appreciate what we have in the town. Steve Burgo, who's on the line, we've been helping him with a couple of the bridges in town, specifically the Mill Road Bridge just north of here is going to be examined by the county for replacement, but it's one of the few metal truss bridges left in the state, only 150. And we happen to have 2 left in our township, so we're doing what we can to preserve that bridge in some capacity. And this one I really want to mention, Mount Zion Church in Devon. Most of you have passed by. It's been a remarkable institution, our township. 3 years ago, they were listed on the National Registry of Historic Places for the Berwyn Church fight. Last year, or it was a year before last, they got a historic marker from the state. And then with the CLG capability, we were able to write a letter of support, and the church got a $35,000 grant to refurbish their beautiful, beautiful stained glass windows. So if you go by the church, they have a dozen of these windows. You'll notice 5 of them are out today, and they're being refitted downtown Philadelphia by an expert. Party in the Park, and we're showing up in the newsletter. So going forward, I just want to focus on 2 of the programs going forward. One is an announcement tonight that we also, we're going to have a fun event. Many of you have probably been on county walks. Each summer, Chester County hosts walks, and it's been a long time since Tredyffrin hosted one. We are going to host this year with our partners at the Tredyffrin Easttown Historical Society, the Historic Preservation Trust, and the walk will be between 2 sites. As it turns out, these are the 2 French generals who served George Washington, Duportail and Lafayette. And it's actually a very, very short walk between their 2 buildings. You wouldn't know it, though, because there's this giant turnpike in the way. But it turns out there's a little underground passage there. So this will be on the 28th of July, a Thursday evening. We're excited that the new Living History Center will be part of this. Hopefully, we'll have a beautiful day. The executive director of the Jones Log Barn always gets perfect weather, so we'll have that, I'm sure, again that night. And just, what is this thing called historic resources? Again, these are the buildings, the properties. A survey was done, also using a CLG grant, back in 2003, and at that time was designated more than 360 properties that had some significance. Not just that they were old, but they had some historic significance. This wound up in a big 4-inch, 3-ring binder, a bunch of digital maps. And you can see in the orange, the blue, and the red, these are the properties in Tredyffrin. You can see how far scattered they are across our township. We, unlike other towns, if you think of like Kimberton, you think of downtown Wayne, we don't have a natural historic district where, all of our historic buildings are centered. So we have this unique situation of many great buildings, many great structures scattered. So how do we wind up keeping the track of these and making sure they're in good health? So this is the beginning of the story of what I would like us, all the residents, all 30,000 residents in the township, to begin to understand, which is this history of our town. We started in the agricultural basin, which we are in right now, the Great Valley, and 100, 200-acre farms. And if you know where the buildings are that are historic nearby, you know how far away they are. Those were, like Wilson Farm Park, was one farm with one set of farmhouses and working buildings. That was the focus, primarily the 2003 survey. Southern Tredyffrin is another era of Tredyffrin heritage. This is when, the folks from Philadelphia started going west. First they were in carriages, passing by toll houses, then eventually the rail came in, and this is, one could argue, our original commercial corridor. So many of these small, light industries occurred here, and that's where you find historic buildings of a different nature than the colonial era in the north. And then finally, interestingly, that big open piece of land in the north became the center for the next wave of Tredyffrin's history, which is the 20th century development of suburban and technology corridor. Beautiful open land to throw a couple big highways through. And so it really cut up our north side. It's difficult to see our history now because of all those channels. But nonetheless, this is our heritage, and the question is, how do we preserve and protect it? So going forward, these are the 8 actions that we'll be undertaking. Ones that are new, for example, number 8 on the bottom, the tourism, getting part of this, people. By the way, I forgot to mention that Chester County Tour in the western townships typically has 150 to 200 people. We fully expect the tour here in Tredyffrin to have, we're banking on 300 and it may be more. So we might actually have to limit the number, but we think they'll be very popular. What I'm going to spend the rest of the short time here talking about is item number one, is updating our preservation plan, which is the plan of action going forward for this 10-year period through 2030. So we had the comprehensive plan done in 2021. That was funded by county government funding, what's called the VPP, or the Vision Partnership Program. So any projects that spur off the county comprehensive plan is eligible for funding. So our comp plan was largely funded by VPP. What we're aiming for in the next year is this strategic preservation plan. And I'll describe the elements in a little more detail, but basically this is going to result in our action plan for the coming years. Next is to look specifically at incentives and protections. We can't get to this stage until we go through the plan, until we go through all the analysis, community discussions, in order to figure out what indeed we want to protect and how to protect it. And then finally, the survey is supposed to be done every 10 years. It's been more than 20 years since we had that survey. So the very last thing we would be doing is an update of that survey. And you'll notice that we have combinations of funding at the bottom. So we are looking at every opportunity for highly leveraging Tredyffrin Township money with state and county money. So here's what we're going to do with this project. The intent is a strategic preservation plan that would be presented to the Board of Supervisors when the work is complete. We're estimating that the work would be complete certainly by September 2023. And we wouldn't probably be able to get launched on this until the summer, July 2022. The most important thing is to hire an expert. We are relatively new to this, and there's a lot of new practices nationwide, statewide, regionally, and so we want to hire an expert. We've talked to a few already, and what they would do is do these three next actions. Prioritize our histories. So which of these histories do we really care about? I'm conscious of listening to a webinar about San Antonio, and San Antonio wound up finding a dozen histories layered into their city, and they said, well, we can really only protect 4 of these in a concerted way. So that was a prioritization process. That's something we may need to do too. What are the pressures and opportunities? When I first got in this role as chair, I met the director of preservation for Chester County, and the first thing they said was, Tredyffrin, you're just like Schuylkill Township in Easttown. You're fully developed. You're a tear-down community. And that stuck with me. We're not like the western townships in Tredyffrin where there's a historic center and we can build around it. We are basically intermixed with, as you all know, history right next to, suburban development from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So how do we play with that heritage? And then finally, I think what we all learned in the past 2 years was we need community discussion. We need to hold the meetings to understand which all the stakeholders, owners of residential historic buildings, owners of commercial historic buildings, the commercial organizations up and down the 202 Swedesford Corridor, Lancaster Avenue, and get these stories. We're going to need an expert in order to organize this, and the people we're beginning to vet for that job have done this kind of work before, and those are the people we intend to hire. So why now? We're following quickly on the comp plan. We're probably in a race with the EAC to see how much we can get done. But I think the most important thing is we have vulnerable properties and landscapes in our township. And every day, as the Chester County person said, is another day where these properties are vulnerable. And then lastly, the CLG status doesn't stay forever. They review it every 4 years. Our next review comes up in 2024. We've been told that we're deficient in several categories, and so we're aiming to fix those. So in order to do this planning, we're looking for a state CLG grant and a county VPP grant. And Joe and I still have a little more math to do, I think, but in general, we have a 10-to-1 leverage again on, and so we're looking at a maximum project of the top right, $60,000, and with that, it would be about $6,000 worth of township match. That's if we win both, and we are gunning to get both. You can see if we only win one or the other, it's a much smaller project and it will delay our progress. So, with that, thank you very much, supervisors. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. This is really fantastic work, and I appreciate you putting this together for the board and for the public. I'm just really happy to see how active our Historic Commission has become. And I also look forward to the Chester County Village Walk on July 28th. Do we have any other board comments?
Yes. I wanted to also thank the Historic Commission for this terrific year-end review that you've put together and for this presentation that you've done for the board. Truly, Tredyffrin is very rich in its history, and I love seeing what you're doing with this, and I want to say especially thank you to Rob Williams. I've really enjoyed getting to know you better the past 6 months as I've come to tap your brain about the history of our various parks in Tredyffrin, and helping to research and dig that up so that we can get some more historic markers in place. And I just find your knowledge and your enthusiasm to be very inspiring as well. So I just want to say thank you.
Madam Chair, Rob, thank you. I'm going to echo the appreciation I have for all the work that the Commission's doing, and I know how much work you've put into this. I appreciate your emphasis on public comment, getting input. We have a lot of diverse ideas, a lot of different ideas from folks that own resources, folks that are interested in resources. Our diversity is our strength, and we need to, hear all those comments and try and at least listen and incorporate them, and as part of the process. And so I'm very happy with, and a lot of this came out of the training as well, and I'm very happy with that and the public participation and the public input being part of the process. Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to give some historical perspective, no pun intended. A long time ago, it seems that I was liaison to the Historical Commission, and let me just put it this way. It's great to see the life that our Historical Commission has now, the involvement under your leadership, Rob, bringing to life the certified local government designation, getting monies, on a 10-to-1, 5-to-1, whatever it is, so you can do more things here in the township and use our money prudently. And it is so exciting to see the township body, the Township Historical Commission, beginning to take the lead in these projects and these endeavors, and doing it in an inclusive way, and being, as Supervisor Freed said, aware of the public sentiments and bringing the public views to the fore. So thank you, and that's my historical perspective.
Any other board comments?
Yeah, I would just say that, Rob, thank you. This is a great presentation, and you guys are all doing very, very important work. I had an opportunity, Bill and I had an opportunity earlier today to do an interview for the Delaware Valley Journal. Chesterbrook was voted the #1 community in the United States the 3rd year in a row. And part of the reason it was voted number one is because of the value of all the historic resources in the community. So people value this. It's part of our heritage, and it's part of what makes our whole community wonderful. And so what you're doing is really important. Thank you.
Supervisor Humble, do you have?
No,
Okay, it's on, so I wasn't sure.
Oh.
Do we have any public comment?
Good evening. John Senior. I'm president of Tredyffrin Easttown Historical Commission, and we just celebrated our 85th year, and we're really pleased to be collaborating closely with Rob and the commission, the revitalized commission, and looking forward to an ongoing relationship there. Very productive and good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
All right, thank you so much. And now we will move on to the motion to approve the Historical Commission application for county VPP and/or SHPO CLG grants. And I appreciate that those acronyms were defined by Rob. Supervisor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is, and we saw some of this is for the, some grants to start the process, engage the consultants, and start moving forward. As Rob explained, there's a very significant state and county match potential. I know that, Rob, you had mentioned 6,200. I know that there's some math conversations that have been going back and forth. So the motion I'm going to make, and after talking to Mr. DeRocco, is that we approve authorizing up to $7,500 for this process, and hopefully it maybe won't be that much, but rather than playing with the numbers, and I think Joe looked at it and thought it might be as much as $7,500. It may not be, and that's only if we get both grants, but we'll make that motion, and then obviously if it's less, we don't need to spend it.
So do you want to make that specific motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we approve the Historical Commission application for the county VPP and the SHPO CLG grants, which includes a cost match from the township in the amount of $7,500.
And I'll second that.
Do we have any board discussion? Do we have any public comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we will have an update on our funding strategies initiative after a very productive first public workshop and some helpful feedback that's been coming in through email. Mr. DeRocco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you just mentioned, at our March 7th meeting, we had about 30 people in person participating. We had another, maybe about 15 on Zoom participating, so a decent turnout. I would say most people spoke about supporting of the proposed stormwater program that we spoke about, both at our February meeting and then again at our meeting, our first thing. And again, overwhelming support for that program overall. At our meeting, we reviewed the presentation, as well as I put together a spreadsheet of what we're estimating costs to be under each of the various funding options. That's been posted to the website. So again, we created a own section on the website for people to be able to go and look at the presentation and any information. Just last Friday, we posted a couple of FAQs for people, and so we again encourage that. We have our April 4th meeting coming up, and I think some of the feedback that I received from the board after our March meeting was that we're hopeful that we'll hear other priorities that residents might have. Also, that would include the board as well. And then also what actual option people would support, whether it be an EIT, stormwater management fee,
sale of the sewer system. Again, we're just hoping to get a little bit more information that way. And then I would say at this point, it probably would be helpful maybe if the board would want to share any thoughts on any of their funding priorities. Again, other than stormwater, we heard, again, I think exclusively really on stormwater. And so I think by hearing from the board and your perspective, that would help drive discussion and conversation at our April meeting with, again, hopefully still on track for April 18th for the board to select a funding alternative and kickstart the next big project for us. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to kick off the board discussion. I think it's very clear that stormwater is our #1 priority right now. I also sit on our subcommittee for fire emergency medical services. I think that long-term funding for the fire companies that serve Tredyffrin needs to be a priority for this board as well. We've already committed over $3 million for the Bridge Avenue Berwyn Fire Station. We'll also need to identify funding for a substation in Tredyffrin in the near future. And the operating costs are going up each year for all of our fire companies. So I do think we should be thinking about how we're going to be supporting these increases and these costs over time, and whether we should address this in this funding strategy effort. And in terms of the funding mechanisms, personally, I think if we're going to focus just on stormwater, the stormwater fee makes the most sense. But I do want to understand what our expected costs are for fire EMS in the near future, and how much that would impact residents in terms of taxes on top of a stormwater fee in comparison to the impact on our residents if we were to sell our sewer system, which would cover both stormwater and fire and other obligations. So that's just some of the things I'm thinking about right now. Do we have any other follow-up from the public meeting from our board members?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. First, this decision is maybe the most important decision this board will ever make for the immediate future. I mean, we're sort of laying the groundwork for future funding of the township. And fortunately, the impetus here was the stormwater issues, the stormwater concerns that we have throughout the township, and the work of the Citizen Stormwater Advisory Task Force, focusing on these issues. And we've looked at the numbers here, and we know that no matter what funding mechanism, this is speaking for myself, no matter what funding mechanism we pick here, stormwater is going to be taken care of. We are going to take care of, I said that, I think others said it at our March 7th meeting. There's going to be no question there. So then the issue is that all we want to do? You know, I mean, this is a crossroads. If that could be fine, that'll be, you know, I'd love to hear at our next open house, special meeting, forum, call it whatever you want. I'd like to hear really what the public has to say about this. Chair Gussie indicated how she feels about fire and EMS. I too feel the same way about that. I also feel the same way about having money raised, if possible, for our for capital reserves going forward. So you might say, so what capital reserves are you talking about if you're going to fund the stormwater and you're going to have the pipes funded and other things and other major projects? Well, we do have bridges and we have other things that we have to take care of, and they are coming up in the future. So those types of things. Our pensions, not the pensions, taking care of our pensions is not a kind of thing that everybody you know, thinks about or cares about unless there's a problem. We don't have problems, but we don't want to have problems, and we can take care of these issues moving forward if we'd like to use another revenue source, and we could, which, you know, would in my mind, would most likely be the sale of the sewer system in a way that, by the way, provides a substantial rate stabilization fund to protect our residents going forward. And that would have to be properly outlined and explained so proper decisions can be made. But, you know, and we'd have, in the end, we'd be paying for our stormwater anyway. Our MS4, which is the, and I always say, hey, Steve, what's MS4? That's Municipal Separate Stormwater Management Program. In essence, it's a Clean Streams Act, but it costs money, millions of dollars, lots of money. And we have to, we're not getting any grants for that. There are no grants for that. We're getting some grants for stormwater projects. Bottom line is, I'd like to hear, and I'd want to hear from residents on viewpoints on how folks would like to use these monies. Do folks just, if they just want to fund stormwater projects, we can do a stormwater fee. We'll do it. We know how to do it. If we want to sell our sanitary sewer system to fund our stormwater, MS4, and other township obligations, we can do that. We've done it before in this township. We've done it. We sold a portion of our sanitary sewer system. So that's what I'd like to hear, hopefully, at this next special meeting on April 4. Thank you.
Madam Chair, so I agree with a lot of what's being said, and I have a little bit of a different take on some of it. I agree that stormwater is an important, critical issue for the township. I also agree that our emergency responders are an important, critical issue for the township, as well as the infrastructure. I think our capital infrastructure, we have a lot of projects on the list and not a lot of money in our capital reserve fund. So that's obviously an issue. For me, though, the question is not, are there more than just stormwater that we have to do? It's a question of do we need new revenue sources, and when do we need new revenue sources? I think there's plenty of things that we have to do as we go forward. We're currently, as Supervisor Gussie said, Chairwoman Gussie said, we are currently funding a renovation to the Berwyn Fire Station on Bridge Street, along with our partners in Easttown Township. And the question is, do we need, a separate revenue fund? And I will tell you that I think one thing that's become clear over the last at least 7 years that I've been on the board is I think stormwater does require a funding source. I think we've been spending money on stormwater, and it's very difficult and it's challenging. We have, as Supervisor Wysocki mentioned, we have MS4, which is both a federally and a state mandated, unfunded mandate. So it's not like we have a choice on that. We have to do that, or we get in trouble with the Pennsylvania DEP. So that's something that has to be done. And it's very, very expensive. We've just to comply with the permit, we're talking millions and millions of dollars, and it's over, there are 5-year permits. So we've got that. I will tell you, sure, it would be great, I think, to sell the sewer system and get a huge amount of money that could go towards all these different things and more that we're talking about that are important. What I struggle with is the impact that potentially could have with rates and fees and annual sewer fees on the residents. What that's going to mean. We've talked about in the hypotheticals of if we go down that road, we can have a rate stabilization fund that could stabilize rates and allow them to move up slowly over a 15-year period. But eventually that fund runs out. Eventually you get a higher rate. You got to compare that, or I need to compare that to what is it going to cost us if we do instead of that, a stormwater fee, or other fees, or property taxes have to go up to pay for other things. So does it balance out? Is it worth doing? I think another supervisor, I thought very well said, in selling the system, are we just selling an asset so we can rent it back at a much higher cost? I don't know. I do think that there are, and I'm not closing my mind to that. I think there are certain advantages to doing that. One of the concerns I also have in the sale of the sewer system is, and I mentioned this the last time I talked about it, there's other things that are beyond our control. We don't have a treatment system. We've contributed to and helped build, but we don't own a treatment system. We rely on other treatment systems. And if those go private, what does that mean for our rates? And do we end up having higher rates because of that anyway? Does our value go down over time? As more and more folks sell, or does it go up? And frankly, what we're finding is just it's on a day-to-day basis, we're getting additional news that is changing the landscape on what a sale might be worth and whether it makes sense to hold on or not hold on. So there's an awful lot of issues that go into it, whether at the end of the day, I think we agree to a stormwater fee, or we agree to selling the system or some combination. The one thing I know is that we have more than just stormwater to deal with. It's just, again, I come back to where I started, which is, do we need additional sources of revenue in order to do that, or can we do that with, say, a stormwater fee, and that freeing up some of the funds that we are currently putting towards stormwater, or in our reserves or other things to deal with the issues. Thank you.
So, we talk backwards and forwards about numbers. We can put them in spreadsheets and we can analyze them and we can do internal rates of return. But I think it's also important as we go forward that we consider some of the qualitative issues, like let's consider, sewage processing. Not a romantic subject, but, we have to deal with it. That's an increasingly technical process. It's not quite like putting in a septic tank from 20 years ago. It's a highly technical process. Requires skill, and ultimately I think it's going to require people who are willing to put their careers, people coming out of college, and they want to work on this process for a while. So I think there are some qualitative issues there that we need to consider. I don't necessarily claim to have the answers, but these are things that we need to consider. And with things like stormwater, I think we also need to consider qualitative issues. I mean, I don't know if you remember the old, MasterCard commercials that would say, pizza so much, this thing so much, wedding on the beach priceless. Well, for the people that, have been, flooded out of their homes, for people like that, what's the price that you put on it? So I think we need to consider, as we deal with levels of service, as we figure out what we need to do, we need to consider some of the qualitative issues as well, not just numbers in a spreadsheet.
And I would disagree with what you just said on numbers in a spreadsheet. I mean, the fact is we are talking about a 30 to 40% increase in what people pay to the township. If you just take the stormwater fee number, I mean, that's a big increase. It's probably a number we need, but it's not a small number for people's budgets. And so we need to be really careful to understand what the needs are, like what are the specific things we need to spend money on, and only go for those things that we really need. I agree I'm on the fire task force too, and I understand that we're going to have to spend money on the fire companies, and that's a service that the residents absolutely expect us to provide for them. And so we need to understand what does that funding look like in the future. So when we present to people we want feedback from residents what it's going to be. We need to tell them here's really what it's going to cost you. You're going to pay $225 extra per year for a stormwater fee if that's what we decide. Or your sewer bills are going to go up to $700 a year because we sold the sewer system, whatever the numbers are. And if we go for just a stormwater fee, if that's what we decide, understand that in the future, there's these other needs that are also going to have to come down the road. So we're kind of pushing the can down the road a little bit for you, but at least so people can make realistic decisions or give us realistic feedback on what they're actually going to feel in their checkbooks. So that would be my feedback here.
I agree with everything my supervisors have said up here regarding looking at all of the needs of the township. I'd only add libraries. We have a beautiful building in our library, but it needs a lot of work, and it's going to need a lot of capital funding going forward. Pensions, capital projects, everything that was said. I think we have to look at the whole picture here and not just stormwater. All of that, again, is our number one item. On the earned income tax, I wish we would spend probably some money on a study to look at the impact of that and how much we could raise. I think we can get away with something less than 1%. And I think it's an elegant solution, solves a lot of problems, and doesn't affect only those who own real estate in the township. Looking past that, though, on the sale of the sewer system, Tawaminson Township in Montgomery County recently just sold their system. It's a township of about 18,000 people, and they do have a sewer treatment plant for about $114 million. That's a lot of money. We have many more residents there. We don't have a sewer treatment plant, but the numbers that were used a couple weeks ago for our funding discussion, I think are probably very low. With that money in dealing with stormwater, I think what we would look at doing is creating, I hate this term, it reminds me of 2000 SNL, Al Gore, but lockbox, and put away $50–60 million for stormwater and just pay projects out of the interest on that, and create a trust fund. And it would also, with the remaining funds, of course, we'd create the stabilization fund. So the impact to residents would come out over a number of years, probably 20 plus years. I think that's compelling. I also agree with the need for generating additional revenue for our first responders and fire. And I would be open to looking at, in addition, to a fire tax as well. There's lots of great ideas up here. It's a tough decision, but that's why we get paid the big bucks for it. And so I look forward to hearing what everybody has to say at our next hearing. Thank you.
Do we have any other board comments?
I guess I'm the only one who hasn't commented yet, and certainly I agree with many of the ideas that other supervisors have proposed. In looking at so many things that do need to be funded, I do like the idea of selling the sanitary sewer system because it would bring in so much money that could help cover so many of the things that need to be fixed. The stormwater, there's a great deal of money there that could go towards the police pensions to pay that down or completely fulfill our obligation there. I like the idea of the stormwater fee, and one that is graduated in that persons who have already done things that mitigate against extra stormwater would be provided with certain discounts or whatnot. For example, persons who have put special drains, like built them into their backyards, if they weren't required to do it because they're adding on to their homes, but they did it anyway, that their stormwater fee would be at a lower amount. They would get credit for that. Persons with rain gardens, for example, might get credit for having the rain garden to help keep the extra stormwater off of our streets. I know that the idea of a bond issue has been raised. I haven't heard anybody else here today speak in favor of it. I know that at our last meeting that was an item that some people liked. I'm still open to listening more on that. I do not like the idea of implementing an earned income tax, because the numbers that we had looked at about it approximately 2 months ago, that would involve imposing a new income tax on persons who haven't been paying it before to any other governmental agency, and it would affect roughly half of our township's working people. So I think to do that to approximately half of the people who are working here, in addition to other fees they might also be responsible for, such as the stormwater fee, higher sewer fees, it looks more like we're making them carry the bigger load, bigger than anybody else is, in one fell swoop. So because that affects so many people and so deeply, I prefer to stay away from that. I think it's the stormwater fee that we had talked about. At least the nonprofits would also be responsible to pay that. So whereas many, like school district properties and such in the township are not paying other taxes, at least this would acknowledge and then seek to have them pay what their fair share would be for the stormwater management in the township. So I am eager to hear more from the township's residents about what they think. So far, we really have not heard that much from township residents, not in terms of written communication or verbal communication. So I certainly welcome more of that to hear what's on everybody's minds. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, we will have the opportunity for the public to weigh in on this decision at our next workshop, April 4th. This is something that will impact everyone, so we really want to hear from as many people as possible. So please attend the April 4th meeting or email your comments to ttbosmeeting@tredyffrin.org, and we really appreciate those who have already been participating. All right, so now we will continue on our agenda. We next have a motion to authorize the purchase of a zero-turn mower. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Public Works is requesting the board's approval to purchase a new zero-turn mower. We'll be replacing the 2006 Ferris zero-turn with a new Ferris zero-turn. The current mower needs numerous repairs that don't make it worth repairing it. The new mower will be purchased under the Co-Stars program from Lawn and Golf in Phoenixville for $29,700, which was included in the 2022 budget.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any board discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize the sale of excess vehicles and equipment on municipal. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The township replaces vehicles and equipment. The unused vehicles and equipment are sold via sealed bid through Municipid, which is kind of like an eBay for municipalities to sell their excess equipment. The vehicles and equipment noted below are no longer in use and will be considered surplus. I respectfully request the Board of Supervisors to allow the township to receive bids for the items listed in the enclosure.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Yes.
Okay. Any board discussion? Any public discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-9, authorizing the township engineer to execute and submit all forms and documents for financial assistance associated with PEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program for various properties located at 1289 Yellow Springs Road and some on Park Ridge Drive. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair and members of the board, just wanted to check, make sure you can hear me first.
Yes.
Okay. As everybody is aware, the township has been working on a program for home acquisition for several properties on Park Ridge Drive and Yellow Springs Road. We've been working with those homeowners, and we've been working with PEMA. As a result of that, we've gone through and submitted several applications on behalf of those residents to PEMA, And tonight's resolution is just basically an authorization for the township engineer, myself, to execute the documents through the PEMA system, and anything that we would need to go through that program with PEMA in the upcoming months until we can have finalization of the particular home acquisition program.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any board discussion? Any public comment?
Madam Chair, I'd like to, not on this specific motion, but I'd just like to say that Mr. Burgo has gone above and beyond the call of duty in helping these folks and who have been really hit by successive storms and claims and damages to try to get their homes sold through PEMA and through PEMA/FEMA program. And that means holding hands and complex documents and evening meetings. So I just wanted folks to know that this just is, it's much more than you fill out a few documents and you throw them in the mail or send something by email. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you for pointing that out. Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote, and I will start with Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Freed.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize the Township Manager to sign letters of support for Valley Forge Trout Unlimited grant applications for the Upper Krabby Creek Watershed Restoration Program. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair and members of the board, included in your packet this evening were 2 letters of support. These are additional requests from the Valley Forge Trout Unlimited, grant applications that are being submitted for the Upper Krabby Creek Watershed project. It is something that's identified in the township's capital plan and in the capital budget, 2022-2023. They did receive a grant from the Growing Greener program already, and these 2 letters of support are for additional grant funding sources for stormwater, so they can do more underground infiltration facilities with this particular program. So they're asking the supervisors for their authorization for the township manager to sign those letters of support in favor of submitting those grants to try to get some additional funding.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board discussion? And I see that Ann Murphy has her hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Sorry. No sound. Oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah? Yes, okay. I can't see that. This is just to say that this partnership has been working closely with the township engineer on these grant applications, and the final decision will be made by the township engineer, but we want to continue to build on the projects in the area of the high school, the Krabby Creek watershed. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Mr. Clark.
Just to recognize the important role that Trout Unlimited is playing in this series of projects in Krabby Creek. Very much should address the volume of water that impacts all the residents in that part of the township. So they have been doing a great job for a long period of time, and I think it's important to recognize that.
Thank you. All right, any more public comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to consider and authorize advertisement of a public hearing on April 18th, 2022 for H.R. 450 to amend Chapter 80 Building Construction of the Code of Ordinances of Tredyffrin Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania, to adopt the 2018 International Building Code and the 2018 International Plumbing Code. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. I realized that was a mouthful. You've basically summarized what the actual ordinance is. It's very straightforward. It's a minor amendment. Your current code adopted the 2015 versions of both the building code and the International Plumbing Code. Approximately every 3 years, the International Association that puts out the code updates their codes, but we don't adopt it as a state and as a local municipality immediately. There's a seasoning that happens with the code to make sure that local municipalities actually want to move forward with it. Your staff has recommended and is asking that we please update the current building codes, which it incorporates the 2018 plumbing code as well. So that's what the ordinance is simply changing 2015 to 2018 and adopting that code.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now we move on to escrows. Do we have, we start with a motion to authorize the second release of $55,646.43 for Berkeley Townhomes LLC, balance remaining $303,876.45. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair and members of the board, this release request is for the Berkeley Road townhomes that are being constructed at 2022 Berkeley Road. This release covers a variety of items that have been completed to date, including a site survey, installation of an underground stormwater infiltration bed, some erosion and sediment controls, and sanitary sewer connection into the municipal line. This has been reviewed and recommended for release in the amount requested, and that's we are asking the board for the release of the $55,646.43.
You're just showing off, getting the number right.
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah. Do we have a motion?
So
Do we have a second? Any board discussion? Any public comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now we move on to new matters. And just to start, board member new matters, I was hoping that we could get a quick update on the Pugh Road Culvert Project. Mr. Burgo, do you mind giving an update?
Madam Chair, members of the board, certainly. I know we've had several residents who have inquired about the status of Pugh Road closure, and we've responded to those. The engineering department and township staff have responded to those residents. We have been working with PECO over the last several months, and at the last call we had with PECO earlier in March, we are under the understanding that they will begin work in April and be complete in May for the gas line relocation, which will open the door for the township to move forward with our construction project. Last fall in October, the board did approve the township staff to advertise and receive bids for the project, which we've been holding off on just because of the unknown time frame for the PECO gas line relocation work. So actually having that in mind, we're looking to move ahead knowing that PECO is going to start work in the near future. We're going to be getting ready to advertise and receive bids and coming back to the board probably at the May meeting for asking for approval of the contractor if everything goes per plan. So we just wanted to give everybody an update and let them know that project is still moving forward. Good news is PECO will be starting their work next month in April.
Thank you for that update. Do we have any other board member new matters tonight? Do we have any citizen new matters tonight? Mr. Clark.
Just quickly, I wanted to recognize the fact that after the education from the Board of Supervisors and Mr. Burgo there, our state representatives had a meeting with PennDOT, about kind of the top 3 PennDOT issues. And lo and behold, PennDOT actually has started something on the easiest one, on North Valley Road. And I think, we should all be very grateful for that, but at the same time also recognize that that's kind of a first step. And that just like all the little sub-watersheds and drainage areas in the township, when Mr. Burgo gets with his engineers and comes up with kind of the comprehensive plan, we should also include looking at all the possibilities, all the way from the train station down through that road, which gets so inundated, and to say, well, maybe that culvert repair is an essential first step, but it's not necessarily enough. So anyway, I wanted to kind of report some good news and some progress. So every little bit helps, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen new matters tonight? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor say aye. Oh, sorry. I was getting too excited. Anyone opposed? That concludes our meeting. Thank you, everyone.